Hello shell buddies and welcome to the Air BnB channel. This week we're going to do something a little different. We are taking a pause on the Shelling with Buddies series to make something that I promised in one of my videos from Keewaydin, making ceiling fan pull chains out of shells. Right now these fans are kind of naked. They don't have anything on the poles and they're a little boring. Okay, I really like these. Oh, these are fun. I may have gone a little bit overboard with all of this, but If you saw that video, you saw me tell my friend Nancy I was going to take an olive she had handed me and make a ceiling fan pull chain out of it. You know what? Let's go back a couple of weeks and just revisit that whole segment again, and this will help explain things.
You know what that is?
I know.
A pull for my ceiling fan, honey.
Oh.
I'm going to keep that and put a chain in it. That's cool.
Olive shells make really lovely pulls for your ceiling fans here. They're just the right shape to kind of fit in your hand and work perfectly, and anybody can do this. All you have to do is go to Lowe's and get a ceiling fan pull chain kit. Then you feed that ball chain into your shell and epoxy or resin it in there or something really, really strong so that it won't pull out of there. I may have to actually do this a little sooner than later because it sounds like people kind of dig this idea and they are a lot of fun. And I really do need to make some for mine. All right, I'll tell you what. Drop a comment here at the video or go hit me up on my Air BnB Facebook page and let me know if you actually want to see a quick how-to. If you guys want to see that, I'll totally do it for you. People asked, so here I am delivering what you want from this channel.
So I ended up making a whole bunch of different style ones, not just shells attached on, but shells with resin, resin-only pieces, even a two sides of the Sunray Venus clam. And I tried a whole bunch of different things out to actually play around with this and have some fun with it. And you're going to see that in this video. Things are time-coded and stamped so that you can jump to certain particular projects if you want to watch them over again. But multiple different styles were actually done in my research for this video.
So we're going to take a look at a few different styles here, making things a little bit different. Also, I'm going to just mention I have a supply list coming up right after you see this little segment. And it says on there air dry clay. You can skip that one. It was kind of a disaster, and I'll explain that later. Let's just say don't mold it. So here's our supply list. Go ahead and pause the video so you can get a photo of that with your phone or a screen capture, and let's go through some of this stuff. We are going to be working with both resin and hot glue, so you do want a silicone mat to protect your work surface and do some of your work on. Also, if you're going to mix anything into your resin, you're going to want those little tiny resin mixing cups and the stirring sticks or some popsicle sticks or whatever for that. I would also highly recommend keeping baby wipes around. They're great for cleaning up resin, especially UV resin, very easily and quickly. And baby wipes are literally one of the easiest supplies to keep around the house. You need a set of wire cutters too to cut the ball chain. If you decide to make tasseled ones and use the specialized connectors with the holes, you will also need some pliers and some jump rings for attaching those non-ball chain things to the end of the ball chain. I'll show you the adapter in just a moment. And of course, as we are working with UV resin, we need a UV resin curing light. And if you happen to have one, you don't have to go get it for this project. But if you happen to have one, the little debubbler that pulls the bubbles out of your resin is kind of a nice touch, especially if you get aggressive when you're mixing things like I do. Now for the fun part, the supplies. Obviously, if you're going to be working with shells and you're using the shell as the pull itself, you need shells that are suitable for that. I recommend olives because they're perfect size, but also banded tulips work nicely. Juvenile fighting conchs, not full-size ones because you don't want them to be too heavy. like pear wilks will work. I even did a hinged sunray Venus and glued it around the ball chain. So any of these kind of shells will work well for this project. Also, if you're going to do the little tiny glass bottles, you'll need some of those glass bottles easily found in the jewelry department at one of your local craft stores, and tiny little shells to fit in there. Hopefully you've gathered up a few tinies in your travels that you have in your stash as well. I did use a blue alcohol ink called Stream, made by Tim Holtz, to tint the water in those little tiny bottle pulls. So something to dye your resin with if you want to get that effect. That you'll just need a little bit of alcohol ink or a resin dye to do that with as well. And then, of course, ball chain and connectors. The ball chain that I ordered came from Amazon. Here's a picture of it. And then those, they come with these little connectors. They're like little cylinders with a carved out section in the middle and two lined spaces. Those hook onto the ends. You just pop the ball chain right into those. You feed the ball in, you pull it, and then bend it down, and it pops that ball chain in there, and it's not going to come apart. The other connectors that I was mentioning earlier, the ones that will allow you to do the tassel style if you have jump rings, this is the one that you want for that. These are a specific connector that will let you hang and dangle things from the end of ball chain by attaching things with a jump ring. So if you intend to do the bottles, or you want to do something else that's longer in style, more like a tassel, really fancy effect, you will need those as well. Important pro tip: ceiling fan chain is generally a 3mm ball chain. So that's the size you want to look for when you're looking on Amazon for both the chain that comes with the connectors and for those special modified ones with the loops on them too. Now on the screen you can see some photos of some different versions of this that I made. And I tried to do a few different things. I tried using resin, I tried using hot glue, I tried using air dry clay, and then I tried sort of branching out and trying different things all together. These are so much fun to make. They're not difficult. Round up those supplies. Pause the screen, of course, if you need to take a screenshot of that so that you can take that with you to the hobby store or to the hardware store. And let's dive in. Let's go have some creative fun making some ceiling fan pull chains. So when I started looking at ways to make these ceiling fan pulls, the thought occurred to me that if I'm going to do this, I should do a bunch of different techniques and see how it goes. Just to try it out and give you multiple ideas. So we're going to try a few different techniques out. First off, with the shells, we're going to try resin to glue the chain in. We're going to try air dry clay. We're going to try using hot glue. And we're also going to try some sea glass. I want to put a couple of pieces of sea glass together and make a set that goes together. But that won't necessarily fall under shells. So for the glass, we're just going to use resin. Now, I'm also going to try some molds too. I have, since I'm going to be breaking the resin out, I might as well do a couple of different things. I have this mold, which I thought these would make really lovely, like just the perfect size, not too super thick, but these would make lovely pull chain ads right here, these tropical palm leaves. And then I also have these turtles, and I thought those would be kind of fun too. So we're going to do resin only molded. And since I've got the molds out, we're going to do air dry clay molded too. So that's like 6 different things we're going to try out. So we're going to do the shells multiple ways, then we're going to try resin and air dry clay and glass too. Now, in order to attach the chain inside the shell, obviously you have to have a place where that chain can go, right? Somewhere in there where you can hide it in there. So I just pulled a couple of olives out. I've got a shell wedged in that one. I'm going to have to get that guy out of there. There, There we go. Just a little coquina was stuck in there. So what I want to try to do is get the chain in here and try it with some resin to make sure it's really super tight, and then try it with hot glue as well and see if it holds up to being used. So we'll try that. I also have a tulip which fits in your hand really nicely, and a juvie fighter conch. That would work nicely too. And I might grab a whelk also. And then I have this crown conch, which is kind of awesome. So this is going to be a big experiment. We're going to try a bunch of different ways to make these. And then I will take the ones that I complete that I don't hang up in my own house, and I'll put them on my website in case anybody's interested in them. Now, one of the things you're going to obviously need, besides, you know, shells to make poles with, is you're going to need some of this stuff. This is ball chain. Now, for ceiling fans, I've got a stainless steel with a 3mm bead on it, and the connectors fit that also. This is the size that my ceiling fan poles already exist and are made out of. Now, this came off of one of the fans in the living room, and I kind of thought, all right, well, this thing's pretty heavy. It's like 25 grams, so it's got the piece on it here already, but I don't like this metal weight. I think that's ugly, and even if I painted it, I still wouldn't like it. So I'm going to end up snipping this off right here and just using this piece as it is. It's already got a connector on, but I'll just show you how the connectors work quick too. All right, so your little ball is inside that connector. Hopefully this is coming out in focus. And to get it out, you basically just go at a 90-degree angle and push, and it'll come right out of that hole. Same to get it back in there. Go like this. There's a little hole and a groove on either side of it. So you go like that, and just pop that back into place. The key is making sure it's the right size, that it's a 3mm that'll match up with the ceiling fan chain that you already have. Because otherwise your connectors won't work quite right because the ball won't fit inside the tube. So that's why I just bought a set that's meant for ceiling fans, came with the connectors. And then I also got these guys. This is a little different. This is a little clamshell kind of a thing where the ball chain attaches to the end. There's like a slit here, much like on the connectors. You just pop the chain in there. Let me get the free end of this chain here. Show you what I mean. The ball goes in just like you're using the connector, and then you slide it up with that 90-degree angle kind of thing. There, it pops right into place. Now you have a place where you can attach jump rings. So if you wanted to do things with wire or things like that, you have the ability to do that and attach them this way onto the end of your chain. Then you use another connector here to attach it to the chain that's coming out of the fan. So that is an alternative also. So I'm going to make a few like that too. So I guess I should add that to the list. See these guys? They're going to have a hole in them because of the way the mold is made. So they're going to have holes for jump rings that'll go on those things automatically. But you don't have to just use something molded. You could totally make like a tassel that's like for a keychain or something like that, just using wire and head pins, affix whatever you want, whether it's a shell or beads, anything, and hook things together so you have like a little tassel that you can grab and pull down for your ceiling fan pole too.
Before I actually start assembling anything, there are a couple of things I need to know. Like on this fan, which one does the light and which one does the fan? I would want to make two poles different from each other for a fan like this so that I know which one's the light and which one's the fan when I go to turn it off or on. I'm also going to need to know how long of a chain section do I need. The chain is put into the fan, and then you can see there's a little connector there.
So I'm kind of measuring from the existing connector that was on this piece just to see how long it was. And I need to do the same for the fan in the kitchen as well as the fans in the living room. I sort of need to know how long to make these things because even though I'm only 5'6", John is like 6'2", 6'3", right around there. And I don't want him knocking his head on all of these things. So I kind of need to know on each fan how long does that chain actually need to be, and how big is the piece that's going to be hanging at the bottom of the chain, because I need to accommodate for that also. Now here's the living room fan. You can see that's what standard comes out of one of these things. And if I just bought a kit with these in it, these chains would be like 8 inches and John would be walking into that all the time. Well, that doesn't do us any good, right? So I'm actually kind of figuring out how far up do I have to reach to touch the fan? Where's my head going to be? Where's do I want this thing to sort of end up? Like right about there. And just so you know, those measurements on every fan were a little bit different. There was a little bit of variance in how long the chain coming out of the fan itself was. Then there's also the factor of, is there furniture in the way of it or is there not? Meaning, does your head need to clear it? Are you walking under it? Or is there a piece of furniture that you're kind of reaching around when you reach up to grab that? So every fan was a little bit different. The one in the kitchen, the one in the bedroom, I had to stand in different places to reach each one of those. So the length on those needed to be a little bit longer so that I can actually reach them without climbing up onto things, which would be terribly inconvenient. But in the hallway dining area and in the living room, those things don't need to be nearly as long. I may only be 5'6" or so, but John's like 6'2", 6'3". So we can't have anything hanging down too low because it turns into a head knocker for him. And I don't want him knocking his head on the ceiling fan pole. On top of that, you also have to consider, what are you putting on there? Are you laying the chain inside of a shell? Or are you attaching a hook to the top to attach to the chain? Those things will make your length vary also. So take notes on this stuff, take some measurements before you cut anything. Let me get my craft supplies organized here and get some of this ball chain cut. Swing this around. Now you can see I'm working on a gridded mat. I have a silicone mat laid over the top of it, but I can see through it. That's the great part of these cheap ones from Temu. You get a good sized one and it's see-through, so your grid can come up through and you can use it to guide you as you work. When I was measuring my ceiling fans, not all of them had the same length chains. In the living room in particular, they only have the fan ones, and it's coming out of the side of the bottom part of the fan. So I'm not going to need as long of a chain for that one. But in the kitchen, I'm going to need a longer one. And then in the bedroom, I'm going to need kind of like a medium-sized one. So living room and hallway are going to get a 5-inch. The bedroom ones are going to be 6.5. And the ones for the kitchen are going to be 8. So I'm just going to cut using my grid here to those lengths. All right, so, and I want the chain not pushed together or anything. I just want it nice and straight. Give me an, kind of an idea of everything. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I can cut that right in between 2 of the little balls. Just like that. So I'm going to repeat that a few times. I have 4 fans. 2 have 2 each. And 2 have 1 each. So I'm going to need a total of 6 to kind of get my fans in the house done. You get the idea. Let's just speed this process up a little bit, shall we? And let me know if you guys are seeing everything okay with this camera angle. I'm choosing to do this with my GoPro instead of my phone because I can't find my storage card for my phone. I have an external drive that plugs into the bottom of the iPhone. I have no idea what I did with it. Alright, so got my chain cut for right now. And when you buy this, it comes in like a length of like 10 feet. And at 6-8 inches a piece, you'll get plenty of pull chains off that little kit from Amazon with a 10-foot ball chain. So let's see how many connectors it comes with. I think 10. 10, 11, 12. Okay, cool. So the connectors, it'll come with 12. But again, you can take any old poles off too and recycle these little connectors. No biggie. Alright, I'll be using Glass Resin, UV resin, clear hard type. And I also have, this is a little lower viscosity. This is good for if you're mixing colors and stuff like that. This higher viscosity one is going to be thicker. I think will work well for just laying the chain inside of the shell to make a pull out of it. All right, well, first things first, these pieces of frosted glass. Let's take a look at these. I've got a clear frosted, and I've got this blue frosted. I think this would look snazzy for that bedroom fan. I really like how those look. And this is going to be like the most minimal amount of work I need to do, basically. So over behind me, and I'll just kind of lift this tripod up so you can sort of see it. There's my UV light. It's that Glass Resin two-sided one. So basically what I want to do is I'm going to put a little bit of resin in between both these pieces of glass. I'm going to wedge this into it, between them, so that it's UV cured right in between both pieces. And then I have a ball tip attachment that I can put right on my chain. And this is the little tray that slides in and out of that UV resin light. I want to make sure that you put stuff on this and then just slide it into the machine to cure. Hopefully this was all in frame because I have the camera up a little bit. Let's try this and make sure you can see what I'm doing. Alright, so essentially, I'm using the resin kind of like glue. And because I'm not using a mold, I'm going to use the high viscosity too. There, just drip the line of this stuff on here basically. I'm going to put this into it like that. Looks like once the glass is on, it'll hold it a little better. And then I'm going to put that piece of glass on there like that. And then gently, I'm going to move this onto the tray. I'm also just making sure my little hook is sort of centered and straight up and down. There's a hole in this glass piece, so okay. Slide my little tray over here. And I just make sure that I have stuff like in the middle of the tray, kind of. Now I'm going to cure it. Make sure I get my tray lined up in there. There's a couple little slots for it. And I'm going to just let that cure for 3 minutes. Now, I could, if I was in a rush, be mixing up my colors for these molds and doing that too. I don't want to do that while these UV lights are on. I've got my curtains open too, which I really should close because UV will make your resin start curing. And if you need a couple of minutes to work with it, that's not real handy. So I will be pulling my curtains shut so that I don't have any problems where that's concerned either. Right, that went off. Let's see. That cured pretty well. It appears to be. Yep, nice and cured. Alright, so there you have it in basically 5 minutes. 2 of these pulls. So now I'm going to just put these little decorative pieces on here, these little connectors. There we go. And you just look for where that little slot is and slot that chain right in there. And I've got these pieces put on so that I can add them to the ceiling fan. If you're afraid, like if you're putting these in a kid's room and you think they're going to be they're going to pull them off, if you're afraid of that, you can always dot this with a little UV resin and cure them in. Or you can take pliers and tighten this up so that they can't pop off of there. You'll still be able to get them off because, of course, it's going to connect to the chain that's inside the machine with the one that you add. So that's that for some resin ones. Clear in the blue. I'm going to go put these up in my room. All right, they're on there. They look amazing. Amazing.
Here they are hanging on the fan in my room. Blue for fan, clear for light.
Now these slightly longer ones I'm going to use with the olives because we're laying the chain in. And before I put the little connectors here on the end, I just got to see if there's connectors on the ones in the living room. And I need to bring a little resin curing thing here a little closer. This time, we're going to take the ones that go for the living room. We're going to use a slightly longer chain and just lay them in with UV resin. And before I do that, I'm going to just put the ends, the connectors on too. It's easier to do that prior. The ones in the bedroom had connectors on them, so I didn't need the ones that I put on. But I just checked the living room, they do not, so. Okay, now obviously I gotta have the chain kind of coming out over here, right? Where the end of the olive is. So I don't need to put all of that in there. Notice I'm just pulling the chain until it falls in naturally. And I go back a little bit. So I have, these are 6-inch chains, I do believe. Let me double check that. Yep. So I'm going to put about this much worth into the end of the olive. Gently straighten it. I'm going to try to do both of these at the same exact time too. Alright, so that's like 2 inches worth of chain. There we go.
Put my high viscosity in there. Now I need to be careful not to put too much in so it doesn't run out, right? So I'm just going to turn the olive a little bit. And also I need the light to get to it because an olive is not see-through. Boy, this would be a lot easier if I had a UV flashlight. I'm gonna just slide this out of here for a second and tack it. And what I don't want is a big glob, so I'm just making sure there isn't one. And I'm just putting this in here to get this quickly set. And then I'll put it in here and let it go a little longer. Alright, that is like a baseline. It's kind of set. A little dot of glue there. It's rather hardened up already. So I am, like I said, I'm going to put a little more of that resin on there and let it sit in there longer. Now, I was also able to pass my hand through this little thing right here so I can make sure that the chain is vertical and not at a weird angle. Oh wow, though, I can see some neat patterns on this olive now that it's under UV light. That's really awesome. That is amazing. Oh, boy, you would never think there was even a pattern on here. This thing looks like it's totally white.
Did you know that UV light will reveal the patterns on a fossil shell, even when you look at it and it looks completely white? A few years ago, a scientist figured this out. And check this, on the left, that's what the fossil looks like. Then in the middle is the UV light, and on the right is, if you reverse the colors, it'll show you kind of what the shell looked like when it was alive. So if you have a resin curing light or a UV light or a black light in your house, check out some of your completely white fossils because it may reveal patterns you had no idea about.
Alright, so we got a little bit of UV there, semi-cured, but I am going to throw some more in there and let them cure for a few minutes. And these don't really seem to be rolling around much. They're staying pretty still, so I feel relatively confident they're not going to roll off of this. We go. And that I'm going to cure for 3 minutes. You hit the button once for 2, twice for 3, 3 times for 5.
We're going to let that cure for 3 minutes and come back when it's complete.
This is just cured for 3 minutes, and I'm just going to do this. Yep, feels like it's pretty well cured. So there we have now some olives. Just check this one. Yep, and the chain's not falling out. Nice and solidly in there. Perfect. Oh, there you go. Now this is with an olive. And an olive has a nice notch right here. The ball chain sits perfectly in. Great size in the hand. Feels nice. Yeah, I like this. This came out cool. And they're in there. I mean, that resin is cured. That's not going anywhere. So that's how you use UV resin to do it. However, there's nothing stopping you from doing it with hot glue either. So that's what we're going to try with some of these other shells next.
If you're enjoying this content, I encourage and invite you to please take a moment to like, comment, share, subscribe, or hype this video. Any of these activities indicate to the YouTube algorithm this is a fun video that people would like to watch, especially if they like crafting and seashells. YouTube has a tendency to want to pigeonhole people into, for me, example, just shelling or just crafting. Humans don't work that way. That's how algorithms work, but humans don't work that way. People have varied interests, but the algorithm doesn't know that and doesn't really know who to share my content with. So if you could go ahead and hit that hype button if it's available, which it should be available the first week that a video is up. If you could hit the hype button, that will signal to YouTube to send my content out to more people like yourselves who enjoy both the beach and crafting with their beach finds. I truly appreciate you supporting my channel, and thank you so much. Let's get back to the creating. Okay, now we're going to do this with hot glue instead of resin. And functionally, essentially, it's almost the exact same process, only it's a little easier to get the glue further into the shell without having to, twist the shell to have it get in there. And I don't need to cure it with a UV light, so I'm sure that it's going to cool and solidify just fine. And honestly, all I'm doing here is I'm just sort of pushing the chain into the glob of glue that I put inside of that shell. Once this cools, it holds just fine. I've tugged on them, I've tried them out after the fact. I didn't have any problems with anything coming apart at all. So hot glue is a really great option if you don't have resin or don't want to bother messing with the resin. It's quick, it's simple, and it goes together just fine without any problems at all. So you can totally use hot glue with your shells as well. You can see here I'm putting some into that tulip. Next, we're going to try packing the chain in with some air dry clay. I have mixed feelings about this. Here you see the texture of the clay. It's hard to describe this particular kind of air dry clay. It sort of has some doughiness and stringy kind of when you pull it apart. And it dries smooth. It's really nice for sculpting and what have you. But I'm not sold on this particular method, and that's for a couple of reasons. Number one, I'm about to try this in molds, and it didn't dry in the molds. Number two, that means, is it going to dry inside the shell? So I can tell you this, once it dried, I did not have any shrinkage problem like they mention. Usually air dry clay shrinks, and it was easy to manipulate, easy to clean up, and it packed around that chain nicely to go into this particular shell. But in hindsight, I think if I was going to do more like this, I would probably drill a hole in the end of the shell or the tip of the shell somewhere just to allow for a little air circulation and allow it to dry in there. After seeing the way that this stuff behaved in the molds, I'm really not convinced that the clay was going to dry all the way inside of the shell. Now, this particular shell, this is not one from here. It came out of a bag of crappy stuff. And it's a bit thinner than a lot of the shells that we have here on the Gulf, but I'm not sure that it actually fully dried in there. I mean, it dried to the touch on the outside after I smoothed it down and left it alone for a few days. It seems quite hard. It dried nicely on the outside. But when I get this stuff into the molds, that becomes a completely different animal. All in all, I'm not sure that I would recommend air dry clay as a solution unless you're going to just sculpt something out of it and do that around the end of the chain. In which case, you'll probably have great results. It'll dry out wonderfully, it'll hold your chain beautifully, and it'll be lightweight, so it'll work nicely. There's pros and cons here. Sculpting, not my strong suit, okay? I'm just going to say it. I'm not a sculptress, okay? So for me to sculpt an actual chain pull out of this stuff seemed like a little more work than I wanted to get into. As far as I can tell, I mean, it's been as I'm recording this audio, it's been like a week since I put the clay into that shell, and it doesn't smell weird or like it's going bad or anything like that. But I'm gonna just leave that and remain to be seen territory. Now, here you see me adding the clay to one of these molds. This turned into a big, giant mess. I let these things, and I'm talking like these are barely like just over an eighth of an inch, maybe a quarter of an inch thick. And I left these things for days and days, and this stuff never dried on the bottom inside of the mold. Once that skin forms at the top layer, at the top level, everything moisture-wise underneath gets trapped. And I left them for days and days and days in these molds without the clay curing.
It looks like these kinds of molds don't work very good. I left this for like 24 hours. And it's thin. I mean, and this is still all stuck to the inside of my mold. I don't know. I don't know if I should leave these other ones in this mold or not, but... So, all right, paper clay doesn't work in molds very well. Maybe I should have used a mold release. Anyway, it peeled out. Like, I can still use it for resin, but that is still like crazy super soft. And this is definitely not cured. Like, this down here is a little better. All right, so we're gonna leave the other ones for another day. Yeah, it still looks like marshmallow underneath there. Okay, I don't know that this is gonna work. Good to know. So this stuff, this air dry clay, I would not put this into molds. If you're gonna sculpt something with it, that's cool. Cover something with it, that's cool. But when it dries on the top and it can't get air at the bottom, it's not happy at all.
Oh man, what a mess. Big fat fail. Nope, 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 nope. I even left those teardrop shaped ones in there for 4 more days. It still didn't dry.
Well, all right, so the good news is that freed up my mold to be used. I'm gonna leave this in here for like another 2 days. And if it doesn't cure, it's not gonna cure, and I'll just take it out. It's super lightweight though.
But you can sculpt some cute stuff out of it and stamp into it, or actually, you know, if you're a good sculptor, which I'm not.
I'm not sure that maybe air dry clay would be my first go-to clay either for this, but I used it because I had it. But when you go online though, you're going to see lots of examples that are made out of clay, including polymer clays and regular earthen clays that you actually fire in a kiln and cover with glaze. And there were examples of this all over the internet. So clay is a viable option. Maybe with the air dry clay, make like a stone or cushion shape. Keep it simple. All right, now let's get to some of the fun stuff. Let's work with the resin. You'll see here I'm pulling out some inclusions. Color Mica Shift Powder by Let's Resin. This is, you can use this 2 ways. A, you can coat your little mold with it, or B, you can mix it in the resin. And there's like 18 colors in there. So I pulled out turquoise and this pale green gold kind of mixture and cyan. Just gonna mess with those a little bit. I've got my mold cleaned out. I finally got the air dry clay crap out of it. And I'm gonna mold those teardrops and those palm leaf looking ones on there. And then I cleaned up my turtle mold too, and we're gonna give those a shot with the resin as well. I'm gonna coat that mold with the mica powder. I'm pulling out some alcohol ink also because you can use alcohol ink to dye resin if you use it moderate amounts. I mean, it's not like you need a lot of alcohol ink to do anything with. It's actually very vibrant, very punchy stuff. It's pretty great, actually. And it's a really easy way to give a little color tint to your resin. I'm pulling out my greens because I'm going to do the turtles. I've got one here that's got a shimmer in it, shaking it up just to kind of get an idea of whether or not it's going to be worth looking at. But it's a little hard in the bottle to tell when they're ultra concentrated what their colors are actually like. So what I'm going to do is just pull my greens out and do a little drop test on some white paper to kind of give me a better idea of what their color is going to look like. Let's get a look at these guys. I'm putting down just an extra silicone mat and some paper, and I just want to put a drop on white paper and see when the color kind of spreads out a little bit, what does it really look like? Like I said, it's tough in the bottle to sort of get a real sense for what the color is. And I ended up pulling 4 colors out. This, I think, is the darkest one. I think this one's bottle green, maybe. And here's a lighter one. I think that one's the meadow. Now, you can see what the real representation of the color is. Like that one is more olive green than you would have thought by looking at the bottle, for example. And that other dark one, it's got like a blue-green tint to it. So it's kind of worth it if you haven't opened your colors up and used them in a while. Just sort of get an idea what you're going to want to work with. So I'm grabbing my little coffee stirrer style stirrer. I'm going to mix the resin in that little silicone cup with a couple of drops of the alcohol ink in it to tone that. But before I get into mixing that stuff up, I'm going to mess with the mica powder first. I grabbed a little brush, and that's how you apply this stuff into your mold. Just picking what color here I'm going to use. I think I'm going to go with a two-tone, kind of like a blue, and then that pale green, which has gold in it. It's going to kind of read a little bit more like sand, maybe. But essentially, this stuff is very concentrated. So you have these jars are really, really tiny. And you apply it to the mold with a paintbrush and try not to make a giant mess with it if you can help it, because it is like little miniature glitter flakes and it gets all over everything. You can wipe everything down with baby wipes if you have to, but it is it makes a bit of a mess on your work surface, especially if you don't want other things mixed in with it. So work with a dry brush. Don't do it wet, do it dry. And kind of push it into the silicone mold. What happens is that the resin picks it up and basically removes it from the mold and captures it in the surface of the resin once it's cured. So it's a pretty neat product. Now that's one way you can use it. The other way you can use it is by actually mixing it directly into the resin, which I'm going to do also. I did both the smaller turtles with that green gold. Now on the bottom, now I'm going back with, I think that's the cyan on that one, and covering the little tops of the turtles. Just going to give them a two-tone effect as an experiment, just to kind of more or less show you how to use the mica powders themselves with the resin. I'm not really positive this is going to come out the exact way I see it in my mind, but you know, if you don't experiment and try things out, you'll never find out. And it's see-through. It's not that it's opaque. If you mix it with black resin, though, it becomes a totally different kind of an animal. Now, black resin comes already that color, and it's more like a dark charcoal gray than black necessarily. But I'm going to combine that with some clear into these molds just to see if it punches up the colors a little bit. Because those mica powders are see-through, whatever color you use behind it for resin is kind of going to become part of that color, if that makes sense. And just with the bottle open like that and using the brush, I still got some on my work surface. And it gets all over your hands and everything else. So I typically just wipe down everything, including my little dry brush, just to get that glittery, powdery mica stuff off of there. Otherwise, when you go to use your brush again, if you don't have it all out, it will get into your paint. Please don't ask me how I know that. Well, I got the mold coated, and I just want to make sure that both of these mold sets fit on this tray to go into my curing light. It's, you know, I mean, I only have so much space. I think it's going to be snug, but I think they'll fit. I think they actually do both fit on there. Yeah, that does fit. Okay, great. That way I can mix up my resin and do those and kind of get everything cooked all at one time. Right, now it's time to mix some of this mica in to the resin. So I'm going to take my resin, I'm going to get it into this little mixing cup. And I'm just doing this kind of slowly. If you squeeze a little hard and there's air in the bottle, you can add extra air bubbles, which, it doesn't really matter, I guess, because I have the debubbler too. And the other thing about this stuff is when you mix it directly in your resin, it's super concentrated. You don't need a lot. That's it. I really don't need to put very much in here at all. You have to mix it well too to incorporate it into the resin because it is a mica powder and it's dry. You get that little jar closed up so I don't knock it over and make a ginormous mess. And I'm just stirring that stuff. I'm trying not to go too fast or too aggressively, trying not to get a bunch of air bubbles put into this. For some reason, when you put resin with the mica powder into the debubbler, it actually makes it like a little harder to get the air bubbles out, I guess because they cling to the mica powder or something and stay smaller. Either way, I don't have to go too fast or too aggressive, just slow and steady here and get it all incorporated into the resin. There, that looks pretty good. I think we've got it as well mixed in as it can be. I did not add any of the dye to this one, just the mica powder. When I do the green for the leaves, I will add the dye, but for this one, I'm just going to use the powder. This is the little debubbler. Every once in a while, I just got to put that gasket ring back on the top. That's what keeps the air from coming around the sides of it. It keeps it nice and tight on the top there. Putting that back into place. And then I'm going to put whatever I mix into an additional container. If resin bubbles over in the debubbler, it makes a ginormous mess. I don't really want a ginormous mess. So I stirred this all up. I put it in this container. I am going to put it under a box just to keep daylight away from it while I mix up the next color. Let's get that green together. Got some clear going into a separate little mixing cup here. And I'm going to use the alcohol ink this time with the Color Shift mica, which is that, again, that pale green gold that I used on the bottom of the turtles. And I want this one super glittery. I don't know, the blue is a little punchier to me than this one. So I scooped a little heavier with this green just to get that color in there and really darken it. But because it's more gold than green, it's going to need a little help, a little boost in the green department. That's where the alcohol ink comes in. I put 3 drops of that alcohol ink in there with that mica, and I got to stir all of that and get that nicely incorporated as well. Now it's a little trickier when you have the mica and the alcohol because it's harder to tell once you have the alcohol ink fully incorporated. But take a little extra time with this one to make sure the ink is all the way through things. When you mix the ink by itself with resin, it takes you about a minute or so to stirring it constantly to get it well mixed all in there, even with a little small amount like this. And remember, this is UV resin. It's already mixed proportionately. I didn't have to add a part A or a part B. It's pre-mixed. But if I'm adding things into it, I still do have to really take my time and make sure it's well incorporated in there. I don't think this is quite green enough. I don't. I'm going to add just a dash more, but I'm going to do it with that darker bluish green and see if I can tone down the yellow a little bit. So a couple more drops of that stuff. You'd see it spreading across the surface of the resin there too and darkening the top. Now I have to stir everything all up again to get that reincorporated with that alcohol ink, but it does end up coming out a nicer color than what I originally had, which was a little too olive a green for, like, say, palm leaves. And it doesn't happen in an instant. I sped this up 8 times so you know how long this took to stir. It was worth it though. Look how beautiful that color is. All right, I got my trusty baby wipe. Just gonna get that off of my little stir stick. As long as you wipe things off while everything's wet with the resin, you're good. It'll come right off with the baby wipes. Now I'm going to put that green in with the blue in that cup. And they're both going to go into the debubbler since I did have to do so much stirring, especially on the green. And a debubbler, if you don't have one, it's like a little vacuum pump. That's why it has that little air seal around the rim. And it's very simple. It plugs in, there's an on and off button, and then there's a little pressure relief valve thing then there that's on the top of it that's green. My hand is covering it right now. Every once in a while it leaks air, but I could put tape over it, but then it's going to be harder to remove it when I want to get my container open when it's vacuum pressured like that. It really doesn't show well on the camera, but there are little bitty bubbles moving to the surface. It's kind of making the top of the resin sort of shimmer. When it's a clear one, I can see it a lot easier. It's a little harder with the mica powder. Let it go for about a minute, and here's what it sounds like when the pump is running, and then you'll hear the hiss when I release that little tab on the top to let the air out. That's so satisfying. All right, we've got our resin debubbled here. Set that back there in case I want to use it again. Have it ready to go. Now that we're all mixed and debubbled, get it out of that little cup that I used in the debubbler to keep it from making a mess. Thankfully, this didn't bubble over, but when it does, oh man, what a mess. Now it's time to do the fun part. Put some in the molds. Oh, that color. Oh, that is so beautiful. That is like my favorite blue. Oh my gosh, I love that. Super pretty. Now, when you're pouring, you don't need to be in a rush or a hurry. Just kind of slowly let it run out of that little mixing cup. Make sure you get some up around that little post where the hole is going to be made in the piece too. And I tried to make sure I had enough to fill both of them. So what I'm doing is sort of just visually eyeballing it and splitting it between the two. And I made almost enough, maybe not quite enough, but I made almost enough to fill both of these mold cavities. One of these little mixing cups will do just about two so that you can make, you fill it up, you can make a pair of earrings or whatever out of it. And of course, I used my same little stir stick. It has a round thing on one end and that oval thing on the other. The oval part I use to stir, and the round paddle part I use to get the extra resin out of the cup. Now is the time I'm actually going to clean that cup out too with a baby wipe. Wipe off my stir stick like I did last time. Baby wipes are perfect for cleaning off stuff while your UV resin is still wet. I'm taking this one, I've used it a couple of times already. I've just folded it up and I'm stuffing it in here and wiping this stuff right out of the cup. I know some people like to cure the resin in the cup and then pop it out, but that really foreshortens the life of these little things. It's easier, quicker, and safer for your mold to just wipe it out with a baby wipe while everything is still wet before it's cured. I've got a bamboo skewer here, and I'm just going around that little post that's in the mold too, and around the edges, just to make sure there's no little bubbles in it or anything like that, no overspill on the edge, and to make sure that the resin gets all the way around that little post. Since it's going to make a hole in that piece, just kind of need to make sure that you take that extra second or two for that step. Let's put some of the green now up in the leaves. Gosh, that color came out lovely with the alcohol ink in there. Now, if you put too much mica and too much alcohol into your resin, it won't cure. So you really can't go too much past the amount that you saw. I mean, I pushed it to about the max that I can include in there without having a curing problem. Now, with a mold like this too, because there's all these little offshoots on it, basically I try to mostly, pour it in the center and let the resin spread. And then you can go back again with a bamboo skewer and just sort of get it into any little spots you missed and release any bubbles that are along the side, that sort of thing. I made the same amount of resin in both cups, but I didn't quite use all the green because that mold is a little smaller. So I'm just going around with the skewer just to make sure I don't have any air bubbles, see if there's any extra room in that mold to put the additional. If not, I'll just off pour it into one of the side pieces instead, like those little dots that are in between the two that I've poured. Hey, you can always use a couple of fun little extra beads for doing things with Crafty Wise. And it happens that I have quite a little bit more here than I thought I did. And I've got enough to fill two of them and then a third one like half the way. And that's before I even scrape the cup. So That was kind of cool, but most of us that use resin, we try not to waste it if we can. We try to only mix what we need, and then if we do have extra, pour it off into something else and do something with it. That color's just too pretty to waste. And once again, I'm going to just wipe off my stick, wipe out my little silicone cup, get the extra out of there while it's still wet and can easily be cleaned out. It's amazing how good a job Baby Wipes does on this too. You'd be really surprised. The turtle molds don't have anything but the mica powder in them, and I don't want to necessarily fill them with that black. So I've just grabbed my clear and I'm putting a little directly into the mold itself right from the bottle. I mean, there's no need to put it into a mixing cup. I'm not mixing anything in with it. But I figured it would take up some of the space so I wouldn't have to use quite as much of the black if the black is really opaque. I don't know if that makes sense, but I only have a limited amount of black and I have a lot more clear, so I took up some of the space with the clear. There you go. Just moving it around with the stick again with the bamboo skewer, making sure I've got it out into the little flippers of the turtle and around the hole on the top of the head where a ring will go through that as well. Just get that spread around and we'll go in with that resin mold almost full and the green and the blue mica are full, and they're all going to go in right now to the curing light together. Then again, I will have to add some more of the other resin, the black colored resin, to the turtles to complete it. So it's thinner in that turtle mold right now than the other two are. And into the little curing light we go. I've got everything arranged on the tray, but I'm trying to make sure that the resin is in the very middle where it gets the best light. And this particular resin curing light goes from both ends, from bottom and top, to cure from both sides. So it's important that you use clear molds with it. And I went ahead and gave that a time of 5 minutes. Just kind of give you a little view of what it looks like inside of there with you can see the little lights underneath and then reflecting on the top from above too. So after our 5 minutes are done, let's get these guys out of here, see what we've got. When you take things out of your resin cure, it can be really, really warm too, which may make them kind of pliable. What I'm doing is giving them a little bit of a test to make sure they're not mushy in the middle. That indicates that something isn't cured. Even as hot as it can be when you take it out of the light, it won't be mushy unless the resin's not cured. And with all the stuff I mixed in that, I had to kind of make sure that it was. So I'm going to let these cool for just a second. Then they're going to come out of the molds. In the meantime, the turtles, the clear layer came out nice, and it's time to put the black on those guys and put them back into the curing light. And I'm really kind of checking to make sure the green is cured all the way through because I've had stuff in the past where it's been a little uncured in the middle. But everything feels pretty good. Things are popping out of the mold nicely. The pieces don't feel flexible or anything like that. They feel like they're fully cured. They're warm, but they are cured all the way. I also like to take and put them back under the light after I pop them out of the mold. Because obviously this, even though it's a clear mold, it does block a little bit of light. So I take things out of the mold and I'll throw them back in the curing light too, just to make sure everything's done. So those little green dots are cute. Those came out nice. This one's a little thin. I'm not gonna be able to do much with that, but I don't know. It was worth a shot. I just didn't quite have enough. I could throw it back in the mold and throw clear on it if I wanted. The blue came out nice. How beautiful is that color? And those didn't fill the mold up all the way either. So they could be a little thicker. I'm going to put them back in the mold. Since I'm doing the black anyway for the turtles, I'm going to put some of the black with these guys too. I'm just going to fit that back in the mold, get that little post through the hole, pop it back in there, and then add the black to it in a second. Black resin going in now. You can see that I'm just, again, right straight from the bottle into the mold because, again, I'm not mixing anything with it. Now, you can also tell that that's not super duper black. It's more like a charcoal gray. Um, I find with this black resin that they're not able to give you a pure, real dark black with UV resin. Polyester resin, you can do that with. It comes pre-mixed pure black and it gives you a much deeper black. But this is a UV resin, and obviously light has to penetrate it. So it's not going to be as black as the polyester resins will be. So adding some of that black to these blue, the blue layer is thick enough. It's not like mica shimmer powder by itself. It's fully mixed in there. So the black behind it doesn't really make much of a difference, but I just figured, you know what, since those weren't filled up all the way, why don't we try it? Let's just see what it looks like and what happens with it after the fact. And right now, what you'd see me doing is cleaning up the edge of the mold because I dripped a little bit on the side, and that's a lot easier to fix wet than it is dry. Keeps me from having to sand and do a bunch of other things. I am going to spread that around with a bamboo skewer though. Again, to make sure I'm around that little post where the hole is up at the top and just sort of even it out. It has self-leveling properties. My table is level, my curing light is level. It would spread, but this just helps it along, gets it to the edge, gets it so that I can get it into the curing light a little faster too. I do the same with the turtles as well with the skewer. I've already got the resin on the skewer. Also, this is a little more complicated of a mold than the teardrop is with the head and the front flippers and whatnot. Again, I'm just pushing that resin around to make sure it's in every little nook and cranny, and I don't have any little weird air bubbles or anything on the side, and that I've got it well around that little post that makes the hole through it. Once everything is all spread around, I get the green onto the tray because I am going to throw those in for a couple more seconds outside of a mold and give them another cure. And we're going to go ahead and start that one for 5 minutes as well. So we're going to let these cure for 5 minutes because the black does take a little bit longer to cure. And I'm just going to move things around in there, making sure the green gets all the light that it needs to make sure everything's done with those.
So filling all of those molds got me kind of jazzed to try something else. I have a bunch of cut shells. See on the top left, you can see some cut whelk tops. And then in front of me are these like cut turbinella kind of shells. And I thought, well, why don't we fill that with resin and see what happens there? That looks like it'd be fun. So see that blue tape? That is a blue UV resin tape. It's meant for the little metal frames that people make necklace pendants and earrings and such out of. But I thought, well, what if we just stick shells to it? I've already taken the one that's kind of to the left, it be on the top at my perspective, but it's on your left here. I've already filled that one with clear, and I'm about to fill the other one with a bluey green tinted kind of color to kind of make it look like the ocean. This is happens to be a different brand from Tim Holtz, but it's also an alcohol ink. And you can see I've got a nice teal color there. I'm going to mix that into the resin and fill the cavities on that shell on the right with that stuff. Again, like before, I've got to mix this well to get all of that dye included and incorporated into the resin. It has a tendency to want to creep toward the sides of your little mixing cup, so just make sure you work around the sides really well to get all of that stuff well mixed into your resin. After I ran it through my debubbler, I'm just hitting it here with a little torch to pop the air bubbles that were in there because I was mixing a bit aggressively. Then we're ready to go ahead and pour now that we know we don't have any air bubbles in there. And I fold that little cup a little bit to kind of just give me a better, tighter control where it comes out of the little pointed tip. Obviously, I don't want to spill this all over the sides or anything like that because once it hardens, it's going to be that much harder to get it off there. So I'm just going nice and slow, carefully drizzling it into all the little cavities here that you see on the shell. This is definitely a slow and steady wins the race, slow crafting, be mindful task. This, you don't want to be in a hurry. You don't want to make a mess with this. You want to be as careful as possible when you're working with these cut shells because they're tough to clean up after the fact. And once I got all of those filled, we're going to go ahead and just get those popped into the curing light. And for this, because it's just clear resin and it's not a real thick layer of it, I'm going to go for a 2-minute cure. I also have these cut welt top shapes. See, you can still see them off to the left there. I filled a couple of them with a sand and resin mixture. And unfortunately, I forgot to turn the camera on when I was doing that part. But while they're curing, I'm mixing up a little ocean water color to top them off with. So I mixed sand and resin together. I filled these little shells up kind of halfway. Again, they're on that blue UV resin tape. And the minute they come out of the UV resin curing light, I'm going to go ahead and fill the cavities on these with this blue that I just mixed into some more of that resin. See, you can see the resin tape underneath there, the shell's embedded in it. I'm going to take my time, just like I did with the other cut shell, gently get this blue in and around, but I don't want to go over the top, right? Because I don't want the water look to be spilling out of the cut shell. I want it encased and enclosed inside of there. So I'm unfortunately blocking your view as I'm pouring this, but it's essentially the same pouring I was doing for the long turbinella types. And I'm just kind of topping this off with that blue colored resin. Once I've got that cavity kind of filled in with the blue, I'm going to push the resin around with my bamboo skewer and make sure that it gets into all the little nooks and crannies around those tiny shells, which are basically half embedded in the resin sand mixture before I added the blue to this. And again, take your time with this. There's no need to rush this process. Slow and steady wins. And once I've got that resin moved around, I'm going to go ahead and pop that into my UV resin curing light for a time of about 2 minutes. It's not a super thick layer, so it doesn't need to go in for any longer than that. It'll cure pretty quickly. Oh, these came out yummy. I love how these look. Oh, super pretty. Fabulous. And while those little beauties were curing, I actually grabbed out some of the wire frames that are meant to use with that blue UV resin tape that you see me holding on to here. I just keep a little scrap piece and tuck it under the end so that it doesn't stick to itself. That way, when I'm ready to work, I can just pull that off, pull out the tape I need, cut it, then I'll just go ahead and stick that little extra piece of scrap on there. It's like folding over the end of a roll of tape basically. It keeps it from sticking to itself and making it a hassle the next time you want to use it. At least this time I'm using this tape the way it's intended to with the actual wireframes. You can see I have an assortment of shapes and sizes here, and I'm going to just do 4 different ones. I'm not sure what size will work best on the chain poles, especially if they're hanging as dangles. So I'm just going to try a couple of things out. And what we're going to do is fill these with resin and sand and put little shells and other little doodads and goodies in them, and then go ahead and cover them over with some clear. I got a bigger silicone mixing cup and a bunch of sand in there, and I have a little more sand maybe than what I need, but I've needed to have a lot in there so it looks like sand. If you make it too thin, it just looks like resin with a little sand sprinkled in it. So this is thick, this is gloppy, and this is a little tougher to spread around than just say dropping some alcohol ink in there because I've actually got inclusions in here. So I'm scooping this stuff out. You can see how thick and gooey it is. I'm kind of making a teeny little bit of a mess, but I made up way more than I was going to need to because I needed to make sure I had enough to fill these frames. They're going to get filled and then have stuff pushed into the sand and then get topped with clear. So I need to fill these frames all the way up with this sand and a resin mixture. This is also not a fast process, so I've sped this footage up just a little bit to get us through this a little more quickly. We're at about 4x speed here, and you can see that I'm using a bamboo skewer to sort of scrape the mixture off my little spatula to help me get it into the frames a little easier. I'm going to use that stick to push it around too. Here we're at 2x speed instead of 4x speed, and you can see me just working this stuff delicately into the corners, trying to get it to stick. And notice that the frame is like 80% full, not full and over brimming to the top, but like 80% full. That's because I'm going to be pressing some things into this sand and resin mixture to cure into it. So I don't want it to kind of slop out the sides or over the top rather when I do that. So I'm mostly full. It'll allow me a little bit more space to add inclusions. And you can see I had too much in that diamond shaped one and not enough in the heart shaped one. So I just kind of scooped some out of there and added it to the heart shaped frame just to make sure that all four of them had mostly filled up with this sand and resin mixture and were ready to receive some inclusions. Oh, and this was the fun part, picking out the fun stuff to put into them. You can see me putting a seahorse. I'm getting ready to put the seahorse there in that diamond-shaped one. I got a couple of little starfish and some mini olives in the heart-shaped one. I'm just getting that little seahorse stuck in there. And I have a little tiny whelk pulled out to put in that long rectangular shaped one. Now, I am going to also mention that if you're using seashells, they capture air, right? There's air inside of them. And if you put them in resin without a way for that to escape while things are heating up and curing, you can end up with bubbles in your stuff. And I don't want that to happen. So I filled it with hot glue and set it aside to cool and worked on filling the frame some more. Now, I'm not going to lie, this process takes a little while, mostly because I didn't decide until I was doing them what I wanted to put into them. And then I had to kind of paw through shells and look through things. But here I am setting the little tiny olives in next to that starfish. I've got a little rhinestone here. I'm going to add into that one as well. Oh my gosh, that's so cute with that teal in there, a little pop of color. That's really nice. And I pulled out some of my smaller shells that I've got all over the place in here to kind of just fill the frames out and add a few different things to them. Now the long rectangle one is going to get the whelk, a horse conch, and a couple of little olives, but I'm pulling a few other shells just to sort of fill in those, blank spaces kind of over at that one on the end. Now, in all fairness, I have to say, filling these little frames up, this was the most fun part of doing this. Just the selecting the little shells and trying things out and seeing what works and bedding them into that wet sand resin mixture and coming up with a cute little layout. This is a lot of fun, this process of filling these up. Here I am setting that little whelk that has the glue in it so that I don't get an air bubble in there. And I also have a horse conch that I did the same exact thing with. So that little horse conch is sealed up with hot glue as well. And I set that one in there. I'm going to put in a couple of these little itty bitty tiny olives that I have, like the ones I used in the heart. Man, these guys are hard to pick up. You have to do this part with tweezers. They're really, really tricky. And they're not even that easy to pick up with the tweezers either. You'll see. Wait for it. Oh, little bugger got away. So again, not something that's meant to speed through as far as crafting is concerned. Meant to take your time, work slow and steady, and once you have everything all filled up the way you like it, go ahead and slide it into your UV resin curing area. Oop, I missed the tray there, missed the groove for the tray to go into. And here we go. We're going to pop that in for a 2-minute cure. And check this out. The starfish and the little seahorse glow under that UV curing light. So that was fun to see. After everything goes in there for an initial cure, I have to put some clear over the top to sort of seal things in, like the shells, and in particular the starfish and the little seahorse, because it was embedded but not covered in resin, obviously. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to see it with all the sand mixed in it. So I just apply some to the center and work it out toward the edges with this little tiny pointy silicone tip tool. They're like paint brushes, but they have silicone tips on them instead of, brush tips. And it just makes it easy to sort of move that wet resin around and get everything where you need it. You might need to do this for 1 or 2 coatings just to make a nice dome and seal everything in there. And then once you're done, pop it back under the UV light for another 2 minutes. Wow, somehow when I was shooting all of that footage while I was making these, I forgot to get the camera on at all making the little bottle. So I'm going to reshoot that part for you. Only I have one small caveat to that. The special connectors that I had with the loops on the bottom that one side attaches to the ball chain and the other attaches with a jump ring to something. I'm out of those. So I am going to show you how to modify one of these connectors to make this all work. Okay, we're going to use this in lieu of those special connectors. I wish I wasn't, because those are much easier to use, but there is a way around that. Okay, and I'm going to show you how to do that. Now, also on those little jars, when I made the resin framed ones that I stuck the starfish and the seahorse and all that stuff into, I had actually mixed the sand with the resin. But in this little bottle, I don't want to do that. So I'm also going to show you how we get around that and keep that sand nice and light colored. I had to go feed the dog, so hopefully the chomping noise isn't coming through. All right, keep that little cork. You're going to need it, okay? Don't lose that cork. You're also going to want some wire. This is just a 20 gauge wire. This is going to be what bridges between this little connector and our bottle so that we can attach it onto the end of the ball chain. You're not going to need a huge piece of it, maybe 4 or 5 inches. That's all you're going to need, but it's a 20 gauge wire. Now also, when I made, like I was saying, the wireframe resin pendants, or the seahorse rather, and the sea stars in it, I actually mixed the resin and the sand together, but what that does is it darkens the color of the sand. Let me show you what I mean. Here's what color my sand is. See how nice and light and sugary and pretty that is? Now look at it when it's mixed with the resin. Look how much darker it gets when it's mixed with the resin. So I didn't necessarily want that for these little bottles, and I'll show you how we get around that. We're going to put the sand in the bottle. Then we're going to throw a thin skim of resin over the top and cure it. That way the sand doesn't absorb all the resin and it stays that nice light color. It may air gap a little. It may, make it so that the sand moves a little bit. But I mean, there's ceiling fan pulls. Is that really going to be a problem? They're not going to be shaking around or anything all the time. And then when we go above that little gap that we put in here with the sand and then the resin, then we put the shells in, we resin that in and cure it. Then we mix the blue in and we cure that too. Finally, we're going to get our wire hanger made, get the cork in and resin that in, and then we'll be done. So it's like a 4-step process to make those particular pulls. They take a little bit more to do. Set this aside. Get my jar open. And I'm just going to scoop some sand into this little jar with one of these little tiny resin mixing spoons. I don't want to get it all up the sides or anything like that. I just want it to just fall down in there nicely. I'd rather have a mess on my desk than have a mess on the inside of the bottle. That'll make sense in a minute. Sand has a tendency to static electricity and creep up the sides of things. So I'm just trying to be, I don't want to get it everywhere, but I don't want it hitting the sides of the jar. I want it just falling straight in there, if that makes sense. And put as much or as little as you like. I think I'm doing about 10 scoops here. All right, let's see where we're at. Yeah, that's a good amount of sand to go in there. Maybe 1 or 2 more. Okay. Now, I don't want to shake this around. I don't have sand creeping up the side. I don't want it to. There we go. And I'm just going to clean my work surface off. And again, I want to make sure I don't have any air. And I'm going to kind of hold this in the center over the bottle and gently get a little coating. I'm being super careful here, in case you can't tell. Let me hold that up and you can see, and that's immediately going
into the curing light. Now some air may release from the sand up, but what we're doing is kind of making a cap to kind of keep the sand where it is so that we don't have air bubbles and we don't have that dark effect. I really wanted this sand to be nice and light in these bottles. Now these are little tiny shells. A little bit of air bubble may or may not come out of them when I cure them. So I'm going to do the same thing I did with some of the bigger shells in the other projects, and I'm going to just put a little dot of hot glue in each one of those guys too. While I'm waiting for that hot glue to come up to temperature, I'm going to quickly show you how we're going to get around the not having the adapter piece issue. All right, so there's a hole on both ends of this, obviously. All right, I'm going to take my wire, and using the tiniest little round nose pliers I have, I'm going to make a little roll kind of here at the end of this. Makes a little loop. And I'm going to squish it so that it will fit inside of this piece. Okay? Does that make sense so far? Then I'm taking this wire, passing it through the opening here on this little connector. I'm going to bring that down inside. And since that's bigger than the hole, it's not going to pull out. Now, I'm probably going to add a little something to that on the inside later after I'm done assembling. But for right now, got this through here and nice and straight. Now I'm going to poke a hole through this cork, and I'm going to run this wire through the cork and coil it up here. Okay? I should be able to do this with the tip of these microfine tweezers. See how tiny and fine those are? That will allow me to get a hole that my wire will pass through. I'm just going to make sure that's straight up and down. And I'm going to press. When I feel the resistance, I think that means I'm at the tip end of it. Yep, because now I can feel a sharp point coming through there. Gently. Slow. Do not force this. You will make the cork crack. Very, very slowly and gently. Ease that up like that. Now you've made a hole through the cork, which makes pushing the wire through it much simpler. If you try to do this just with the wire is going to bend, right? So you've got the wire through the cork now. I'm going to slide it up to the connector. There we go. I'm going to bend it at a 90-degree angle. And I'm going to trim some of this wire off. And I'm going to make a coil. And I got to make sure that coil doesn't get any wider than the top of the cork. Otherwise, it won't fit into the bottle. So we don't need a huge coil, just a small one. I'll leave about an inch or so, I guess. Let's take a look and see. Yep, just under an inch. That'll be fine. We're going to want to coil this kind of around, right? And just get that round part sort of started. And then I let the pliers do the work, and I push the wire while I'm holding that piece like that. What this is going to do is prevent the wire from being able to slide out of the cork once we resin this in. Okay, so there we've got a coil here at the bottom of this wire. And now that cork and that connector are one piece. Let's double check our fit. I just pulled this out of the resin, or out of the resin curing light, so you can see that my sand is trapped under a layer of resin now. Yep, that fit in there just fine. That's going to be perfect. Okay, great. Moving along. My hot glue gun is now warmed up. Let's just double check and make sure. Oh yeah, glue's coming out of there. As I did with the bigger shells, I'm just taking this fine tip and I'm just gluing these little shells closed. This is so that they don't release air bubbles into my resin for the next layer. It's very micro-fine, tiny work here. And I don't need a lot. Just a littlest bit. This glue gun is amazing, you guys. This is a Sure Bonder and it's rechargeable. It sits on a charging dock and then you can pull it off and work with it and then put it back on the dock to get it hotter again. Okay, move in there. And because we're working with clear glue and clear resin, this glue won't even show once it's all assembled. And see, isn't that nice? Now that I have that resin cap on there, that sand can't go anywhere. There. I'm just going to swing the camera around and kind of show you this too. This glue gun is awesome. Right, you see there's a little light on the back. You just plug it into that. The stand, the tip is right over the little non-stick pad. If you want to use it as a corded glue gun, you can. You just unplug this from here and you plug it into the bottom of the gun. But while it's plugged in like that, it charges and it heats up and it stays hot for a good couple of minutes so that you can work with it and then set it back on the charger. Game changer. Game changer. No, I'm not sponsored. I bought that. Sure Bonder didn't send it to me. That is my opinion, unbought and paid for, true from real world use. Okay. That hot glue doesn't take long. Drop these little shells in here. All right, so I've got a collection of shells in here now. Get this guy unstuck from the wall. There we go. Yeah, there's a little glue string stuck there on him, but that's all right. That is not going to matter in about 2 seconds. Back to the resin. I'm going to stick this a little further into the opening this time. I don't care so much if it gets on the side now. And I'm going to put a little layer in there. Kind of get the shells covered with that. Get a little stuck to the wall, but that won't matter when we add the blue anyway. Okay. Back under the light. And while I'm at it, I am going to put a little dab on this, just to keep this thing solidly in place. And while my little bottle is curing, I'm just going to hold this here because it's wet. I don't want to set it down. And I don't need it to be full cured because it is going to get set inside the bottle. I just don't want my cork thing to come apart. And there's little shells curing away in there. That next layer, because they have air trapped in them, they want to float a little bit. That's why we're working in layers. Otherwise, they'd pop all the way up to the top of the bottle, and that's not where we need them. We need them in the middle. Okay, this should be, yeah, that's firmed up. Enough so that I know this, you know, I mean, it's a little tacky still, but it's firmed up enough I know this isn't going to come apart. I think I hit the 3 minute instead of the 2. I don't really need it to go that long. It doesn't need to, because it's going back in for another cure, right? So, all right, now we have our sand, we have our shells, and even with the hot glue, a little bit of air bubble action, but not a lot, no big deal, perfectly fine. Now we need to mix up a little bit of the blue, right, so that we can top this with that nice oceany color, and we're going to fill it up most of the way and squish the cork in, and we're going to make sure that there's resin all around this part of the jar. Then the glass is clear, so when we UV that resin's going to get cured right to that cork. Hope that made sense. And I am going to go over the top of the cork too a little bit as well, and just seal around the top of the thing once we're at that point. I don't need a lot of blue. I need a very little bit to fill this up. Put some resin into my little container here. That's all I'm going to put in. There is a bubble in there. I can see it. I'm going to just pop it. And this stream is a beautiful color. I'm only going to put 1 drop right now, because for a small amount, I don't think I'm going to need very much at all. And see how the alcohol ink sort of spreads around in there? And it wants to kind of creep toward the sides of the resin, or the resin cup rather. So when you stir, you want to keep making sure to scrape off the side. And that 1 drop, I think, is going to give me the right color. Again, I don't want it super duper dark, right? It's supposed to look like ocean water. It's not supposed to be completely opaque or anything like that. Oh boy, I hear that thunder getting closer. Now you can see as I'm mixing, I'm getting air bubbles in here. Now that I've got this nice and incorporated, I throw that in my debubbler for a second too. Just pull the air bubbles out of it. If I have too much, that's fine. If I don't have enough, I'll top it with the clear. As long as from here to here looks blue, I'm good. All right, into the debubbler, and I have very little in this cup. There's no inclusions or anything like that, so this shouldn't give me any trouble with running over the top. It's not like when I had the mica in. I always sort of just hold my hand over that little thing, just to kind of make sure. And I don't know if there's enough light. Let me turn the light and move this.
Oh, there we go. You can kind of see the bubbles are being pulled to the surface there. That's exactly what this little tool's job is to pull the bubbles that you get in your stuff when you're mixing up to the top, so that you can pop them with rubbing alcohol or a little torch or whatever. I'm a little funny about shooting it with rubbing alcohol because I'm afraid of stuff not curing. So I just hit it with the torch. Yes, I have a little bit of alcohol in it because of the alcohol ink, but not enough that I'm going to turn this thing into flambe or anything like that.
You can see the little bubbles are collecting at the surface there. Put my hand over that, because it sounded like air was trying to get out a little. And even this small amount, I got like 30, 45 seconds, maybe a minute. Sort of looks like everything's pretty much pulled to the surface at this point. So, yeah, see, it does leak a little bit. Press my finger on there or cover it, and that keeps that from happening. Oh, yeah. Okay, now ready for this part? See, it is leaking a little. There. Hey, like I said, it does leak a little bit. It's a cheap knockoff one from Temu, so, you know, it's not a particularly expensive or large one, but for the size stuff I work in, it's perfect. So after that, you can see that these bubbles are kind of just sort of crowded around there in the center of the top, and I'm trying to hold this so that you're not getting the glare off of this light. All right, I'll try this sideways then. Light the torch, skim it over the top. Bubbles are popped. Boom, boom, and boom. There you go. Just takes a fraction of a second. Now, I'm going to bend my little silicone cup so that I get nice control here. And I'm going to pour that in to the little bottle. There's my little spatula tool. Doesn't look like a lot of resin, but we don't need it to fill a big space either, do we? Because we're pretty close to the top. So gently getting the last little bits and dribs and drabs of it in here. Basically, I want that blue to make sure it comes to the bottom of the neck, or the bottom of the bottleneck. Try saying that again. There. Use my baby wipe, clean my little stir, clean out my resin mixing cup. There we go. Now let's see, how full are we? Yep, we're just about to the neck. Okay, perfect. So, in we go. Cure that for another 2 minutes. After that cures, I'm going to put a little bit of clear in it and around the top. Now, I didn't want it all the way filled up if I'm curing it, right? Because then that coil's got nowhere to go. So the very top, at the bottom of the bottleneck, is where that wire is going to sit at. What's the matter, buddy? You haven't been in a video in a long time. Is that all you wanted? Oh, did you hear that? That's a sandhill crane. Yeah. Good boy. I don't know what you think you need. You've already been fed and watered. You're just mad because John's not inside yet. You goofer. Oh, good kisses. All right, I added my chain onto the other side here. This is cured. Look how cute that is. Your little layers, your sand, your shells, and then your water. Oh, I love it. Oh boy, can you hear that thunder? All right, everything's all cured. Now, the final, slightly tricky part. I'm going to put a little bit of resin on the outside of the cork so that it's all resiny when it goes into the bottle. And I'm going to put a little dash of resin on the top of that blue. Not too much, because when I squish the cork in, It'll come gushing out the top if I do that. We don't want that. All right, get that little drip off of there. And now I'm pushing this in. And see, it is kind of coming out around the cork. That's okay. That's not a big deal. That's going to help this stay nice and sealed. Perfect. And I don't want to gob anywhere. I want it kind of nice and evenly distributed. So I'm going to just do this for a few minutes while this kind of cures. Then I'll go back over the top of everything with another thin layer of resin. And we'll be able to call this done. Just in time too, because I'm thinking thunder and rain noise are gonna make it tough to hear me in a minute. It's getting very, very dark outside. All right, and it should be cured enough for the moment. All right, for the last little bit of this, I'm gonna put a drip or two on here and move it around with my little silicone tool. Just going to make sure that the cork is coated and that the resin runs down to the top of the bottle without running too far over it. Take the excess off. I'm going to pull this tray out and I'm going to set the bottle right in here and give it another minute or two. And we'll be done in just a second. I'm trying to shoot this in between bangs of thunder now. And there we go. We have a nice little, very rock solid little bottle full of shells, with a little modified connector that we made just so that we didn't have to go and order more of those connectors from Amazon. Now I did knock it a little bit askew before I set it in there, so it's not perfectly straight up and down, but you get the idea. That is exactly what we're after right there. And you can see a bubble formed in that blue, which doesn't bother me. I mean, it's number one, it doesn't hardly even show. Number two, it just gives it more of that oceany vibe and look like there's a wave captured sort of inside of it. So that's how you do those cute little bottles. How adorable is that? Oh, these are my favorite ones. I just adore these. I love how they came out.
Now that we've gotten one kind of complicated style out of the way under our belt here, let's try another. These bougie, blingy, tassel style ceiling fan pulls. Kind of reminiscent of like a charm bracelet for your purse or your Stanley Cup a little. Well, this is sort of the same thing for your ceiling fan pulls. Now, I have to modify a connector, and I'm just going to twist a little loop on the end of this piece of wire. Just like the last project, I'm going to squeeze that loop a little bit and kind of pinch it closed. Then I am going to pass this piece of wire through the connector, just like we did for the last one. And I'm going to make a couple of these. I've got 3 of them done up. I'll get them attached to the ball chain by the other end. There we go. And this is just like what we did last time. We made a loop. We put it through the connector. We added the ball chain. Here's the new part. We're going to cut some regular chain to make the tassels out of. This is what we're going to attach all the little charms and wiggly movie things to right here. And I'm going to cut like 5 inches of this chain, and I'm going to sort of fold. I'm going to do it twice, obviously. I have 2 poles that I'm doing this for. And I've cut a slightly longer piece of pull chain for these. I'm thinking these might actually end up in my lanai where I need the longer chains. So I'm making these a little bit longer. I may or may not keep these. I'm not sure until they're done. but I'm giving myself the option if I do want them out in my lanai where I need longer ones. So all I'm doing here again is another modification on one of those little connectors. I'm going to do what's called a wrapped loop. I grab my pliers and I make a loop about an eighth or so inch away from the end of the connector itself. You can see I'm straightening the wire out right here. Then instead of pushing the wire around to make a coil, I'm going to grasp the end with the needle nose pliers and wind the tail of this wire around the main part of the wire that's coming out from the connector. This is called making a wrapped loop, all right? You can look that technique up a little bit online if you want to see some more about how people use it and what they do with it. It's a very common wire wrapping and jewelry technique that just gives you something a little sturdier than simply cutting the end of your wire and making a loop out of it. This is kind of soft wire. It wouldn't really hold a loop forever if I hung something too heavy or pulled on it too much. A wrap loop is a much more secure option, so that's what I'm making here. I'm going to just tighten the wire around the main post of this first, and then I'll trim off what's left. There we go. And of course, from here, I can just add the ball chain to it on the other side. And now, instead of one of those connectors that has the tab ring on the bottom of it, I have a ring to hang things off of. Now I fold the chain asymmetrically. I don't want it matchy-matchy. I want one side a little shorter and one side a little longer. I'm going to grab some jump rings and pull those out of my jump ring box. And I'm going to end up taking and sticking a jump ring in not necessarily the middle link of this chain, but offset a little, making one side a little bit longer than the other. See, I tried it half and half first and I didn't like it. And for fullness in a tassel, you really want that asymmetrical look. So I'm just trying it in a couple of different places to see where I want to put it. And instead of trying to eyeball it that way, I just gave up and put it on the grid, found my spot, and put the jump ring through there. That same jump ring that's going through the chain to make my two little asymmetrical dangles, I'm also going to attach the little modified connector I made that's attached to the ball chain already and put that in that jump ring too. And I tend to work with 2 pairs of pliers for opening and closing jump rings. It's a little easier. I'm able to make this little tool that goes on your finger to help you open and close jump rings. I've never liked using it. I'm much more comfortable with 2 pairs of pliers in my hands, just getting better control, having both sides of it completely in the pliers. For me, that just makes it easier, but however you want to close up your jump ring, whatever's comfortable for you, you can go ahead and do it that way. Now I have this nice little 2 pieces sort of chain, 2 different links of it, hanging off the bottom of that pull chain via the modified connector. I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing for the second one as well because I am making a set of 2 of these. Close up the little jump ring, and there we go. We've pretty much got it the way we want it now. Here comes the fun part, deciding which little doodads and charms and all that I'm going to hang off of these little tassels. I have some bigger ones off to the side that are some wire wrapped quote unquote beads also that I've made, and I'm going to be taking those resin pendants that I made earlier in the wireframes and hanging them off the bottom of the longer side of the folded chain on each one of the pulls. Again, just doing this with jump rings. You see me opening and closing them with 2 pairs of pliers. That's how I work. And just add that to the jump ring, add the chain to it, and you can add a little small charm at this point to this if you would like as well, just for a little extra flash, dangle, movement, whatever. I like to hang my biggest piece at the bottom of the long chain first, then sort of fill in and around. I mean, I don't, I'm not going to hang a dangle at every single link of this chain, but I want them to sort of fall in a way that where one stops at the the top of it, the bottom of the next one sort of begins. And that just gives you a little sense of a fullness to that. You can add as much or as little as you like to this, make the beads as big or as little as you want. I ended up using a package of charms that I had that were all ocean related anyway. So there's little seashells and dolphins and seahorses and starfish and all that kind of stuff. Realistically, from the floor, you may not be able to make out what most of this stuff is because they are so little. But they overall look adorable together and look really cute. And even though it's not meant to be looked at like a piece of jewelry, I sort of still treat it like a piece of jewelry because that's where my brain is wired. You can see in the background there, I have some of those wire wrapped beads that are made with the silver and blue wire. And I did that because they're slightly bigger in size and it helps fill out the fluffiness of the tassel to make it a little more lush. On this one, on the short piece of chain, I'm adding a little crystal bead dangle here. That'll be really cute and sparkly sort of at the end of that second part of the tassel, which is going to be nice. So, yep, just take jump rings, take what you want to add to it, and keep working your way through until you have these complete to your liking with how much or as little bling as you actually want on these tassels. So I just continued to hang stuff until I thought it looked full enough. I'm just picking up my little work area a little bit so I can show you these a bit better. I've kind of got jump rings all over the place here. That tends to happen when I'm doing jewelry style work. But so here we have it, one of those really fancy and very embellished tassel style ceiling fan poles. Oh, I like how that looks. That is really super duper cute. Here's the other one. They aren't a perfect match for each other. They're slightly different from each other, which I think makes them a little more interesting. One's got the heart. One's got the rectangle with the starfish. And then I placed the beads in a slightly different way on both of the tassels to make this an asymmetrical matched pair. But I really like how this came out. These are sparkly fun. Now that they're complete, let's get a little bit closer look at these guys. See how pretty they actually are a little closer in. Yeah, those are hot. And hey, while we're putting stuff together, maybe we ought to go ahead and assemble the rest of these. Now, some of these ones that I worked on earlier already have that little modified connector attached to the piece. Some of them don't. This little one, the cut welt, does. So I just cut off that chain off of my original pole from my light in the bedroom and just popped it onto the little modified connector here. And I really do like this one. I think this is great. Here's another one of the cut shells, the one with the aqua colored. I ran into a little snag with this one, and I'll explain. The resin flowed into that top opening. It wasn't supposed to do that, but it got underneath that little spire in the center and ran right under there along the taped edge. So I had to drill a hole in this guy in order to be able to get it attached to anything. Now on this one, that top hole stayed nice and open. No resin flowed into it, and that was great. But the second one, I had to make the hole, and I had to do a little wire wrapping to get that one attached too. You'll see here where I'm making another wrapped loop, kind of, to attach this to, only it's a much longer loop, and it's going to pass through the hole on the shell. The one with the clear that had the hole at the top, that one was pretty easy. All I have to do is make my wrap loop and just put a jump ring through the opening on that shell, attach it to the bottom of the chain, close the jump ring up. Everything's great. Easy peasy. For the blue one, it's a little trickier. I actually have to wire wrap the piece as well as modifying my connector with a wrap loop. I actually have to make a wrap go through the hole on that I drilled on this one and make a connection point for the wrap loop at the bottom of the chain. So that's what I'm doing here. Just some very simple wire working. Took about 5 inches of wire, put it halfway through there, and I make another wrap loop at the top of that piece, just like I've been doing with the modified connectors, and that's how those are going to go together. The camera angle was a little low, but you can see that I've already got one loop kind of wrapped to make the hanging attachment point. I'm going to then just kind of, I had wipe, just wrap that extra piece of wire out of my way so I could get the first wrap loop done. Then I go back and I wrap the wire that came through the pendant around the previously wrapped loop, just sort of bringing everything all together there. I wish I had actually had my camera up a little higher to get a little more of this for you, but you guys get the idea. Just making a wrap loop to hang it from, completing the wrap from the other side to hang the pendant, and then we're going to go ahead and hang that from the wrapped loop on the modified connector with a jump ring. So this one makes the dangle a little bit longer for the pull chain, but that really doesn't bother me. I think they look super cool the way they are. And again, if the resin hadn't flowed underneath that section in the middle, I wouldn't have had to go through all the extra steps, but I'm not displeased with how it came out at all. I really like the look of that with the light coming through the resin, especially. Ew, that is just, love that color. Cut welt top resin was another one that was easy to do. I had one of those fancy tabs. All I had to do was attach it to the chain with a jump ring. Easy peasy. And the same with these resin pieces. I'm going to go ahead and demold these. That's the black with the blue and all of that mica. Gosh, that came out so pretty. I really, really like that as well. Here's just get it out of the way, get it out of the mold, get it off of my work area and off to the side a little bit. Let's demold those turtles while we're at it too. That had the powder rubbed into the mold, then the clear and black put onto that too. That came out pretty neat. I actually like the little turtles. I'm gonna keep one to make myself a keychain with instead of a ceiling fan pole. But yep, they came out kind of neat, and I really like the effect with that darker resin sort of setting them off. Now, earlier I had set myself aside a handful of those little special ball chain connectors with the loop tab on the bottom of them, just so that I could hang poured resin pieces from my chain. So, I mean, when I said earlier I was out, but they had been set aside for a specific purpose, which was these little guys right here. All you have to do is get a jump ring through your little poured resin piece. And before you close the jump ring up all the way, add the little tab, the loop tab connector that goes on the end of the ball chain. Then close up your jump ring. Then you can just pop the ball chain right on there. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy, super simple to complete these. Same exact process for any other little poured resin pieces that you have, like my teardrops and my turtles. Just get the jump ring through, add the little tab connector, close the jump ring, and attach the ball chain to your piece to complete your pull. Here we are with some of the completed ones, not all of the completed ones. This was most of the way through before I made the tassel stage, but here's my little ones that I hung in the kitchen already. And I didn't keep the cork, right? Because I still had those pull chain tabs, and that's what I used for those. Show off some of the resin and the pendants that everything was assembled from. And this was just a little chance to kind of see some of these things close up before I actually completed them into their projects and hung them up, where it's a little harder to get pictures. Okay, I really like these. Oh, these are fun. Super duper duper fun. Oh, that looks so pretty up there like that. I'm making more of those. Those are awesome. Oh, those are just marvelous. Oh my gosh, they're so fun. Super, super pretty. But yeah, tricky to, get them up there because of having to sit on here and reach up and stuff like that. Not super easy, but worth it. And I just have to say it, I made a whole bunch of different styles with these little bottles. Oh my goodness, these are totally my favorite ones. But it's hard to pick on other favorites when there's so many fun different styles and techniques that you can try to actually accomplish this. So let's take a look at all the different styles we did. I did a clam shell, two-sided Sunray Venus, and a regular shell around the chain. Those cut shells were amazing. Just plain shells on there. Some poured resin pendants. These were also super fun and super cool. And then we have those crazy tassel styles that were really involved. Super blingy and so much fun to make. Wow. How much fun were those? Oh, those little bottles. They're just so dreamy and cute. I love them. I love them. I love them. And I actually think I want to do these as earrings too. So there you have it. 10 different ways to kind of conceive and make of these different ceiling fan chain pulls to totally personalize your decor and make your house feel vacation beachy all the time. I absolutely love mine. And I forgot I had a ceiling fan out in the sitting area, kind of the lanai. Totally putting a couple more out there on that fan too. Now that one's much taller up. My chains have to be much longer. So, and I haven't picked out which ones I want yet. I have to decide which ones I want. The ones that I don't end up hanging up, I'm just going to put these out on my website. You'll be able to check that link right here at eshwaybijou.square.site. And you can just look for ceiling fan pull chains, and there'll be some loaded up there in a couple of days. It's just going to take me a couple of days to just photograph them and get the listings up. So there you have it. If you don't want to make your own, you can even get a couple from me. And if you do want to make your own, you have 10 different styles there, which you can experiment with. From the simplest, where you're just resining or gluing the chain into the shells, all the way up to the fancy little bottles and tassel styles. I had too much fun with this. I thought I was going to whip together like a 5-10 minute video on this, and oh no, this became like a whole thing, a whole adventure, and I had so much fun making these and sharing them with you guys, and I can't wait to see what ones you make too. I'm looking for you to be posting them on my Facebook group, Eshway Bijou's Shell Buddies. You can see a link here, and there'll be a link in the description for that as well. But these are super, super fun, great rainy afternoon activity, and just makes your place so much more personal to your beach style. So if I had to pick my favorites, I mean, I know I hung the olives, but they were really very simple. And there's a couple others that are actually much more my favorite. Number one, those bottles. The bottles were killer. Absolutely enjoyed the whole process of making those. Those fancy palm leaves out of the glittery green resin, those are really stunning too. And I didn't hang them up here at my place, so they are going to be available on my site. But oh man, like imagine those with one of those ceiling fans that has like the 5 woven blades that are leaf shaped that go like this and kind of come to a point. Man, those would be on point on that. They would look so good on something like that. And what else? What else would my other favorite ones be? Okay, the tassels, the crazy tassels. Even though they're like bougie over the top and a little too much for my style here, they were so fun to make, and I absolutely adore those tiny little pendants with the resin and the sand, especially that seahorse. Super cute. Oh my goodness, love it, love it. And I would also have to say these crazy ones. Now, these kind of ended up being a bit of a mistake. I'll just explain that. See how on this one, I don't know if this is going to show on camera, but that hole is left there. That was the intention for this one too, but the way the shell is formed, it wasn't cut on quite the same angle, and the resin leaked out and went into this top cavity. So I did have to drill a hole through that to be able to do a little wire working to attach this one. But I really like how these came out, especially with that blue in the shell. I think that is just so pretty. It is so cool. Oh my goodness. So yeah, there you have it, guys. I would say the bottles, the tassels, and these cut shell ones were my favorite. And oh my gosh, I almost forgot about these. Now, you didn't see me necessarily making this one, but it had that resin sand mixture in half of it, and then the light oceany blue put on top of it. And then I sort of embedded these little rhinestones and went over with another layer of clear. And then I covered the back with a glittery resin. So yeah, I forgot about these. These are really cool too. This is a cut whelk top. Imagine you're looking at a cross section of the lightning whelk and it comes down to a point and the spire is right here. That's where we're cutting through, is near to that spire area where the spikes are on kind of the shoulder of the shell. I was only able to get a few of these, but I'm going to have to make a necklace or two out of these and use these again, because these were pretty fabulous. How about you? Which one was your favorite style? I'm going to put a little poll over here at YouTube posts and on my Facebooks, and you guys tell me which one of these projects that you like the best and you most see yourself making. I can't wait to see what you guys do. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like, share, subscribe, comment, or hype if you see that button, and it'll just help push this content out to other YouTube viewers like yourself that love shells, love the beach, and want to craft with them. I really appreciate you supporting my channel, and remember, if you want to have crafting adventures like these, then you know what you need to do. Get out there and go shelling. Thanks so much for watching. We're going to get back to the Shelling with Buddies series, and I'm going to make friends with a baby pelican. We'll see you next week right here from the beach, guys. Happy crafting and have a great week.